When my daughter-in-law told me, "We're not coming for Easter. You're not really family," I smiled and said, "That's all right, sweetheart." But when she saw my Facebook Live later that day, she started shaking. She had no idea who the 50 people at my house were, or what they meant to me. My name is Marilyn Hayes, and this is the story of how one painful moment turned into the most meaningful Easter of my life. Before I begin, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Easter has always been my favorite time of year. The colors, the flowers, the laughter. It's the one day that brings everyone together. For as long as I can remember, I've hosted Easter lunch at my home. I decorate the table with fresh tulips, bake Ethan's favorite carrot cake, and set out little baskets for the kids. It was our tradition. That week, my house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. The kitchen counters were covered with eggs ready to be dyed, and soft gospel music played from the radio. Everything was ready. All I needed was a "see you soon, Mom" from my son, Ethan. He called 3 days before Easter. I was sitting on the porch when I heard his voice, and I smiled instantly. "Hey, honey," I said, "are you bringing Sophie's parents this year? I'll make extra rolls." There was a pause. It was short, but it told me something was wrong. "Mom," he said quietly, "Sophie's been thinking, maybe we'll just stay home this Easter." My heart dropped, but I tried to sound calm. "Oh, is everything all right?" He hesitated again. "She just feels like, it's been a long month. She wants a quiet weekend. It's nothing personal." I could hear Sophie in the background saying something. Then Ethan sighed. "Mom, she said you're not really part of her family, so it's just easier this way." I froze. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. I didn't want Ethan to hear the hurt in my voice, so I swallowed it and said, "Tell her I said okay. You both have a lovely Easter." Then I hung up. The house was quiet again. The smell of cinnamon still filled the air, but it didn't feel warm anymore. I looked at the table I had set with care, plates, napkins, decorations, and suddenly everything looked pointless. Later that evening, my friend Grace came over with a small Easter basket. She noticed my mood right away. "What happened?" she asked, sitting beside me. I told her everything, word for word. She shook her head. "You've done nothing but love that girl. How could she say something like that?" I smiled sadly. Maybe she doesn't understand what family really means. But I'm not going to fight her about it. Some lessons life teaches on its own. Grace squeezed my hand and said, "You always take the high road, Marilyn. One day, they'll see how lucky they are to have you." After she left, I sat by the window watching the sunset. The neighborhood was quiet, but I could hear kids laughing somewhere down the street. Families were together, planning their Sunday meals, while my house felt like it was shrinking around me. I picked up the phone a few times that night, thinking I should call Ethan again, but I didn't. I didn't want to make things worse. Instead, I prayed for peace in my heart, not anger, not bitterness, just peace. Before bed, I walked into the kitchen one last time and looked at the cake cooling on the counter. I whispered, "You did your best, Marilyn. That's all you can do." Then I turned off the light and went to bed, not knowing that this Easter would become the one everyone in town would remember. Easter morning came slower than usual. I woke up before sunrise, but the house was already quiet, too quiet. Normally, by that hour, I'd be checking the oven, humming along to the radio, waiting for Ethan and Sophie's car to pull into the driveway. The sound of tires on gravel used to be my favorite sound in the world. This time, there was nothing but silence. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the decorations I'd left up, the pastel tablecloth, the little bunny centerpiece, and the baskets filled with candy I'd bought for their kids, all waiting for people who wouldn't come. The sunlight was streaming through the window, but it felt dull somehow, like even the light understood my heart wasn't in it this year. At 9 o'clock, I turned on the TV, hoping a bit of background noise would fill the emptiness. The Easter church service played on the local channel, voices singing Amazing Grace. I tried to sing along, but my throat tightened halfway through. I shut it off and sat in the silence again. My phone buzzed once. For a second, I thought it might be Ethan, but when I looked, it was just a group message from church sharing holiday wishes. Then, a few moments later, I saw a notification from social media. Sophie had posted a picture. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. There she was, sitting at a fancy dining table surrounded by her parents and siblings. The caption read, "Family Easter. Couldn't be happier." Ethan was in the picture too, smiling, his arm around her shoulder. Everyone looked perfect. The table was covered in crystal glasses, gold plates, and spotless silverware. For a moment, my heart stung so sharply it felt like it might break. I wasn't jealous of the table or the decorations. I just couldn't believe how quickly I'd been erased. 1 year I was cooking for everyone, making sure every plate was full, and the next, I was nothing more than a name people avoided saying. I set the phone down, trying to breathe. It hurt, but I told myself not to be bitter. Anger was heavy, and I didn't want to carry it. Still, the silence in the house pressed on me like a weight. Around noon, my neighbor Grace knocked on my door. She held a plate of deviled eggs and said, "I figured you shouldn't eat alone." I smiled weakly and stepped aside to let her in. She took one look around my living room, the untouched cake on the counter, the chairs neatly lined up, and shook her head. "You really went all out, didn't you?" "I always do," I said. "Old habits are hard to break." She sat across from me and said softly, "You can't let this get you down, Marilyn. They're the ones missing out, not you." "I know," I said, forcing a smile, "but knowing doesn't make it hurt any less." Grace reached across the table and patted my hand. "You've got too much heart to spend the day in this quiet house. Why don't you come with me to the church potluck? There'll be good food, good company, and nobody judging you for being kind." I thought about it, but then I shook my head. "I appreciate it, Grace, but I'll stay here. I think I need to figure out what Easter means to me now, without the noise, without the fuss." She nodded. "Then at least promise me you'll eat something, besides coffee and sadness." That made me laugh, and it felt good to laugh again, even for a moment. After she left, I walked through the house, touching small reminders of my family. The framed photo of Ethan as a baby, the hand-painted egg he made when he was 6, the old cross that used to hang above our family table. Every piece of it told a story, and that's when it hit me. Maybe I couldn't make Ethan and Sophie show up, but that didn't mean I had to spend the day invisible. Maybe Easter wasn't about who came to your table, but about who you made feel welcome at it. The thought was small, but it felt powerful. I looked around the empty room and whispered, "You can still make something beautiful out of this." I went into the kitchen, tied my apron back on, and turned on the oven. I started baking again, not for them, but for anyone who needed a meal, anyone who might be spending this holiday feeling as forgotten as I did. I opened my windows and let the smell of cinnamon and sugar fill the air. Then I pulled out my phone and started sending a few messages. I texted Pastor Dean from church, a few of my neighbors, and even an old student I knew lived alone nearby. "If you don't have family to spend Easter with," I wrote, "you do now. My door's open." It was a simple message, but it felt right. By the time the first batch of rolls came out of the oven, my heart felt lighter. I didn't know who would come, or if anyone would, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone to make me feel loved. I was creating it myself. What I didn't know then was that this small decision, one kind message, one open door, would turn into something so big that even Sophie herself wouldn't be able to ignore it. Within an hour after I sent that message, my phone started to buzz with replies. Some were simple thank yous. Others were hesitant questions. A few people said they didn't want to bother me or show up uninvited. I smiled at every message and wrote back, "You're not bothering me. There's plenty of food and room." By noon, the kitchen smelled like home again. I had trays of baked rolls cooling on the counter, a ham roasting in the oven, and the carrot cake waiting on the table. The house that had felt so empty that morning was now filled with warmth. I didn't know how many people would actually come, but I was ready for whoever did. The first knock came around 1 o'clock. When I opened the door, there stood Mr. Lewis, my mail carrier. He was holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "I saw your post, Mrs. Hayes," he said with a shy smile. "You said anyone without family could come. And, well, that's me this year." I grinned and said, "Then come in. Your family now." He stepped inside, still looking a little unsure, but once he smelled the food, his whole face softened. A few minutes later, Maria, the grocery store clerk I'd texted, arrived with her teenage daughter and a pan of tamales. "You said open door, right?" She laughed. "Absolutely," I said, taking the dish from her. "You brought the good kind, too." The next thing I knew, more people started arriving. Grace brought a big bowl of potato salad. Pastor Dean walked in with a choir member and his wife, and one of my old students, Jenna, showed up carrying homemade cookies and said, "I couldn't let you celebrate alone, Mrs. Hayes." The noise grew louder by the minute. Laughter, clinking plates, the hum of conversations blending together. I could feel something I hadn't felt in years. Belonging. It wasn't the kind of family gathering I had planned, but it felt even more genuine. Someone suggested taking a group photo for the church newsletter, and that's when I had the idea. "You know what?" I said. "Let's share this joy. There are so many people online who think Easter is just about big fancy meals and perfect pictures. Let's show them what real love looks like." Grace raised an eyebrow. "You're not thinking of what I think you are you?" I smiled. "Oh, I'm thinking exactly that." I set my phone on a little stand on the counter and opened Facebook. With one tap, I started a live stream. The camera faced the room, where everyone was gathered around the table, laughing, passing plates, and sharing food. "Hi, everyone," I said into the camera, waving. "I'm Marilyn Hayes, and I just wanted to wish you all a happy Easter. I wasn't supposed to host anyone this year, but I decided family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who cares, and who shares their heart with you." Behind me, people waved and called out cheerful greetings. The screen filled with smiling faces. The comments started appearing quickly. "This is beautiful. Wish I could be there. You have such a big heart, Marilyn." The more people joined, the more alive the room felt. I wasn't doing it for attention. I just wanted to share the joy that had found its way back into my home. Pastor Dean raised his glass and said, "To kindness. May it always come back to you multiplied." Everyone clinked glasses and echoed, "To kindness." As I looked around, I noticed something that nearly brought me to tears. The people in my living room weren't just guests. They were smiling, talking, connecting with each other like old friends. Mr. Lewis was showing pictures of his grandkids to Maria's daughter. Grace was laughing with Pastor Dean over a story from church. My house, which had started the day empty and silent, was now full of life, full of laughter, full of the kind of love that doesn't need to be explained. Halfway through the live stream, I saw the view count climb higher and higher. Dozens of people were watching, then hundreds. Some were commenting about how they wished they had neighbors like this. Others said it reminded them to call their own mothers. It was overwhelming in the best way. Then something unexpected happened. One of the names popping up in the comments caught my eye. Sophie Hayes. For a second, I froze. My heart skipped a beat. She was watching. Grace saw my expression and leaned over. "Everything okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yes. Better than okay. I didn't say anything about her. I just kept smiling into the camera and said, "To anyone watching this who feels forgotten today, remember, you are loved, you are seen, and there's always a place for you at someone's table." The comments poured in faster after that. I ended the live stream with a laugh and said, "Thank you for spending Easter with us. Now go make someone's day brighter." When I put the phone down, everyone clapped. I didn't know why, but that simple sound filled me with peace. I hadn't planned any of this. It had just happened because I refused to let rejection define me. I didn't know what Sophie was thinking at that moment, but I did know one thing. She had seen what love really looked like. Not the kind you show off in pictures, but the kind that welcomes anyone who knocks. And that small act, one live video, one open door, would soon change everything I thought I knew about family. That evening, after everyone left, I sat on the couch, surrounded by empty plates and leftover dishes. The house was a happy kind of messy, the kind that told a story. You could still smell the food in the air and hear the faint echo of laughter if you listened closely enough. My heart felt light, but my body was tired in the best way. I hadn't expected this day to turn out so full of life. I looked down at my phone and saw hundreds of notifications from the live video. People had shared it, commented on it, even tagged friends to watch. Messages poured in from strangers thanking me for reminding them what real family looked like. Some said they watched it with tears in their eyes. It was overwhelming, not because of the attention, but because I could feel the love that had come from something so simple. But one message stood out. It was from Ethan. He had written, "Mom, I saw your video. We're on our way." My heart jumped. I glanced at the clock. It was almost 7 in the evening. I went to the kitchen and began to clear the table. Not out of worry, but because I needed something to do with my shaking hands. 30 minutes later, I heard a car pull up in the driveway. I looked through the window and saw Ethan step out, holding something in his arms. A basket of flowers and a box wrapped in pastel paper. Behind him was Sophie. Her face looked pale, and her eyes were swollen like she had been crying. I opened the door before they could even knock. Ethan didn't say anything at first. He just stepped forward and hugged me tightly. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm so sorry. I don't even have the words." I hugged him back, feeling tears rise in my own eyes. "You don't need words, sweetheart. You're here. That's what matters." When we finally pulled apart, I looked at Sophie. She stood there silently, clutching the edge of her coat. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't look proud or distant. She looked lost. "Can we come in?" she asked softly. "Of course," I said. "You're always welcome." She stepped inside, glancing around the room at the plates stacked high, the half-eaten cake, and the leftover dishes waiting to be washed. "It looks like you had quite the party," she said, her voice trembling. I smiled gently. "Yes, I did. People who didn't have anywhere to go came by. It turned out to be a beautiful day." She nodded, her eyes watering. "I watched the whole thing," she said quietly. "At first, I thought it was just another post, but then I saw everyone there. The smiles, the laughter, the way you spoke about love and family. It made me realize how wrong I've been." I stayed silent, letting her speak. She took a deep breath. "I thought family was about perfection," she continued. "Matching plates, fancy dinners, making everything look good for pictures. I didn't understand that it's about this. Warmth, kindness, being there for people even when they don't deserve it." She looked at me then, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't deserve what I said to you. I was selfish, and I'm sorry. Truly sorry." I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my voice steady. "Sophie, I forgave you the moment you said it. I know sometimes people hurt others out of fear, not hate, and I know it's not easy to admit when you're wrong. So thank you for coming here tonight." Ethan stepped closer, holding Sophie's hand. When she saw your video, Mom, she started shaking. She said she couldn't believe what she was seeing, that so many people were drawn to your kindness. She realized you've been family not just to me, but to everyone around you. I smiled softly. I don't know about all that, but I've learned that love grows bigger the more you share it. Sophie looked around again, then smiled through her tears. Can I help you clean up? She asked. I nodded. I'd like that. So we rolled up our sleeves and worked side by side, washing dishes, putting away leftovers, and wiping down counters. It was quiet, but it wasn't the awkward kind of silence. It was peaceful. Every small gesture felt like a step toward healing. When we finished, I poured us each a cup of coffee and sat down with them at the table. Ethan told me how proud he was, how people at his workplace had even shared the video. You've become a bit of a local celebrity, he laughed. I laughed too. If that's what it takes to remind people what love looks like, then I'll take it. Sophie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Can we come for dinner next Sunday? I'd like to help this time. Maybe bring dessert? My heart felt full. You don't need an invitation, I said softly. This home will always have a seat for you. For the first time in a long while, we sat together, mother, son, and daughter-in-law, not as people trying to fix something broken, but as people ready to start over. Later, after they left, I stepped outside and looked at the sky. The stars were bright, and the night air was cool. I thought about how strange life can be, how a moment of rejection can turn into a lesson in grace, how one small act of kindness can change a heart. Inside, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from someone I didn't know. It read, "Thank you for reminding me to call my mom. We haven't spoken in years." I smiled and whispered, "That's what Easter is for." As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I felt peaceful, not because everything was perfect, but because I knew love had found its way back, not just into my family, but into the hearts of others too. That night, I realized something powerful. You don't have to fight to be called family. You just have to live like one, and eventually, love will find its way home. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds outside my window. The air was crisp, and the sunlight poured gently through the curtains, spreading across the room like a quiet blessing. For a moment, I just lay there, letting the stillness sink in. My body felt tired, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Easter was over, but somehow it felt like something new had just begun. When I walked into the kitchen, the smell of coffee still lingered from the night before. The table was cleared, but a few signs of the evening remained. A dish towel draped over a chair, a crumb of carrot cake on a plate, and the bouquet of tulips Sophie had left by the window. Their colors were soft and bright, pinks and yellows that seemed to glow in the morning light. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, my house didn't feel empty. It felt alive. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the table, thinking about everything that had happened. Just a day earlier, I had been sitting here feeling forgotten. Now I was surrounded by memories of laughter, forgiveness, and second chances. It amazed me how quickly things could change when you chose kindness instead of bitterness. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up expecting more comments from the Facebook video, but this time it was a text from Sophie. "Good morning, Marilyn. Thank you for last night. I know it can't erase what I said, but I'm so grateful you let us come. I woke up feeling like I finally understand what family means." Reading that message brought tears to my eyes. I typed back, "You're welcome, sweetheart. Family is something we build every day. Yesterday was a good start." After that, I scrolled through the notifications from the video again. There were thousands now, messages from people all over the country. Some shared their own stories of loneliness. Others thanked me for reminding them to reach out to their parents or grandparents. One woman wrote, "I watched your video with my teenage daughter. We ended up calling my mother after 3 years of silence. Thank you for showing us how powerful forgiveness can be. I sat there, reading every single one, tears quietly rolling down my face. I hadn't planned to touch anyone's life that way. I had only wanted to fill my empty house with kindness, but somehow, that small act had rippled far beyond my little kitchen. Later that afternoon, Ethan stopped by again. He said he wanted to help fix the old fence in the backyard, something he'd been promising to do for years. Watching him out there with his sleeves rolled up, humming while he worked, made me smile. It wasn't about the fence. It was about effort, about showing up. When he came inside for water, he looked at me and said, "Mom, Sophie's been talking about hosting you next Sunday. She wants to make your carrot cake recipe herself." I laughed. "Well, she'll have to earn that recipe first," I teased. But deep down, I knew what he meant. Bridges were being rebuilt, slowly but surely. Grace came by later that evening, with her usual energy, holding a newspaper in her hand. "Look who made the community page," she said, dropping it on the table. There it was. A picture from my Facebook Live showing everyone smiling around my kitchen table. The headline read, "A local Easter gathering reminds us what family truly means." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Oh, Grace, I didn't do it for attention." "I know," she said, patting my hand. "That's exactly why it mattered." That night, I stepped outside to water my plants. The sky was streaked with orange and purple, and the first stars were starting to appear. As I stood there, I thought about how life can take away your plans, only to give you something better. I had lost one version of Easter, but found another that felt truer, a version filled with grace, new friends, and forgiveness. I realized then that family isn't always made of people who share your name. It's made of people who show up when your heart needs company. It's the neighbor who knocks on your door with food, the friend who reminds you that kindness never goes unnoticed, and even the ones who hurt you but come back to make it right. Before heading inside, I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't to anyone in particular, just a quiet thank you to life itself for giving me a second chance at love, at peace, at belonging. Later, as I got ready for bed, I checked my phone one last time. Sophie had posted a picture, the three of us sitting together at my kitchen table. Her caption read, "Family isn't about who's perfect, it's about who's there." I smiled and turned off the light. That one sentence told me everything I needed to know. We were okay now. Maybe not perfect, but real. And real is better than perfect any day. So, if you're watching this, I want you to remember something. No matter who has turned away from you or what has been said to you, you still have the power to choose love. You can still open your door, smile, and build a family out of kindness. Because sometimes, the people who aren't related by blood are the ones who heal your heart the most. Thank you for listening to my story. Make sure to subscribe for more true stories like this, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing your stories too. And maybe tonight, call someone you love. You never know what that small moment could heal.